Nobody tells you there's a difference between having the talk with your daughter and having the talk with your daughter. Because we had talks before, the basic ones, age appropriate, educational, where are babies from, the whole stork. Those are the talks where you still feel like you're doing okay as a parent. You walk away thinking, all right, I didn't mess that up. This one was different. This was the talk because now one of her friends had started having, and that's how it always happens. Not because your kid wakes up one day curious, but because another kid shares way too much information. So she comes to me completely calm, tells me what a friend said. And then she adds, real casually, that a friend even drew her a diagram on a napkin. Nothing good ever came from a napkin diagram, which is how I knew this situation had officially escalated. No relationship drawn out on a napkin, no math, no matter whatever it was, nothing good has ever come from that. And then she just waits. And immediately my brain goes, okay, new chapter. I didn't panic, at least not out loud. I said, let's go for a walk. Because walking is how dads survive uncomfortable conversations. No eye contact, forward motion. If things get awkward, I can just pretend I'm really focused on the sidewalk or have just discovered a really interesting crack in front of me. So we're walking through the neighborhood. It's a nice day, really quiet. And she's explaining the napkin diagram like we're talking about homework. Meanwhile, my brain is going, stay calm, don't speed up, and don't slow down. Do not turn this into a lecture. This wasn't our first talk, but this time the stakes were different. Before it was curiosity, not proximity. So I slow everything down. I ask questions instead of giving answers. I listen more than I talk because it was in that moment that I had this realization that this was not about explaining biology anymore. This is about setting tone, respecting boundaries, being ready, being safe, because now the dynamics of all of our future talks have changed. She's calm. She's thoughtful. She's completely comfortable, which somehow makes me a little more uncomfortable because she's a little nonchalant about the conversation. Because now I realize she's not struggling with this conversation. I am. It was my little girl was growing up, and I didn't want to accept that. At one point, she asked a question, and I paused a second too long. Nothing dramatic, just enough for her to notice. She looks at me and says, Dad, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, this is just what thinking looks like. We finished the walk. The talk is done. She's informed. She's confident. She's fine. Later that night, though, I replay the whole thing in my head. Every sentence, every pause. Did I say too much? Did I say too little? Did I accidentally make this weird? Because being a girl dad isn't about having one big conversation. That's not how it's going to happen. It's about realizing the talks are going to keep changing and they're going to get more complicated. But here's the part that really matters. My daughter's an adult now. She's grown up and she still comes to me for everything. Advice, questions, the hard stuff in her life. And I think back to that walk and that napkin diagram, to how comfortable I was trying to stay calm. And I realized that that walk wasn't really about the deed. It was about trust. And somehow, by not freaking out back then, I earned a place in her life now, which means every awkward moment, every awkward walk, every uncomfortable pause was worth it. Even if I needed that walk just as much as she did. And that's just being a girl dad.